Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Calling Council. We are getting close to 4th of July. Do you have any 4th of July plans?
I think we just the Saturday before we were going to the lake, I believe, and family and get together and cook out whatnot on that Saturday.
Yeah, I'm gonna go see my family some, and then my in-laws. Man, they go all out for the 4th. They do big cookout and fireworks. I mean, that's like their big holiday. I think they celebrate the 4th maybe even more than they do Christmas. They have a big blowout, so that's always fun. My father-in-law, let me tell you about the best prize I ever won, duck calling. Won the world one time, and they had a guy that was a company there that was showing off a smoker, and it was one of these big, like, and I don't know if I'll say the correct name or term for it, but it was like the barrel, like the drum. I mean, you hook this thing up to the hitch of your truck and pull it, and it's a rotisserie smoker.
Oh, yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
And I'd always thought about maybe even getting one of those things, but they cost quite a bit of money, and it's always one of those would I really use it that much? Is it worth investing in? But ended up winning one of these things. They sponsored the contest, and then they're like, well, what are we going to do with this thing? Are we going to auction it off, or what are we going to do? And Bill Free said, no, we're just going to give it to the winner. It was one of the years that I won, and
oh wow,
so that might be the best prize that I ever won. But well, value wise, it was really good.
Yeah.
And then I've never cooked on it, but every year, 2 or 3 times a year, my father-in-law loves to barbecue, and he is awesome at it. I love me some barbecue ribs. You can tell by looking at me, I never met a rib I didn't like. So he smokes a bunch of ribs and brisket and all kind of stuff there on the 4th of July. So that's a day I always look forward to.
Man, barbecued ribs was one of my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
If it sits in that rotisserie for several hours and it just everything absorbs in and it falls right off the bone, is my favorite.
Yeah, it might be one of my favorite foods, if not my favorite too. I always tell you, it's funny, my father-in-law, he's real meticulous with everything that he does. He's a perfectionist. And so he always asks me, he's like, Brad, how are the ribs? And they'll be like some of the best dang ribs I've ever eaten, but I'll never tell him that. I'll be like, hey, I'm pretty good, but because I want him to keep working at it. Because the more he gets challenged, the more he'll cook.
Right.
So I'm going to want to kind of sucker him into keeping this up. I'm like, it was pretty close, a little bit, I'll tell him, so I'll make something up, that, and he'll be like, and he'll come back, he'll want to cook. So about a couple of weeks, he'll want to try to see if he can fix it and cook some more. Now, we got the weekend after the 4th, you and I are going to a show in Huntsville,
Alabama.
The Tennessee Valley. It's funny to me, it's in Alabama, but it's the Tennessee Valley Hunting and Fishing Expo, if I've got the name perfectly correct.
Yep.
So that's 7th, 8th, 9th, I believe.
July 7th through 9th. Right after, of course, the 4th, we're going to make that little travel to Huntsville. Mm-hmm. I wish I could carry my bass boat. I'd like to go over and fish Guntersville. That'd be awesome. Yeah,
you're more of a fisherman than that, but that's a big bass. So you say they have a lot of big tournaments on that lake?
They've got some big tournaments there at Guntersville, man. I watch a lot of shows and stuff that's at Guntersville. I'd like to go over and fish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You always stay a couple extra days.
I got to work. we got to push calls out.
We got too much stuff to do, don't we?
Yeah.
No rest for the wicked. So we got that coming up. Now we're going to do some seminars there. We're going to have a booth there. So if you happen to be in the area, please come out. It's at the Von Braun Center, which is kind of fun. I'll tell you a funny story about it. Von Braun, do you know who Von Braun was?
I've heard of. No, I don't.
He was, I didn't know until the first time I went to this show a few years ago, and it's the Von Braun Center. He was like a rocket scientist guy. He was big with NASA, and I don't know exactly all his credentials, but he was like one of the major players in, the development of NASA and, rockets and all that type of stuff. I mean, he was one of the top guys, and his name was mentioned. What was that? What was that movie from years ago? I don't know if you saw it. That had that Jake Gyllenhaal, or if I'm saying his name right, where he was the young boy who dreamed of like being an astronaut, NASA stuff. He had the school project where he was wanting to make a rocket, and it was all about the time that NASA was getting going and Sputnik and all that. So he was mesmerized by it, and he later, I think, went on and became big in NASA with rocket science. But there was like one scene in the movie where he showed his rocket off at school or somewhere.
I remember seeing that.
They had a little launch at the end. It was like kind of like the climax of the movie where he saw how high he could shoot a rocket that he had made, this boy, and a guy came by and complimented him, and then he found out later that was Von Braun, so that's kind of how I remember
watching something about a kid doing that for a science project. That's been a long time ago.
There was a guy in Newport where I grew up, and my dad was good friends with his father, and he actually made duck calls. His name had an odd name, Blunt. Hahn was his last name, Hohn. And Mr. Blunt, I remember my dad was good friends with him, and I didn't know at the time when I was young, but Mr. Blunt actually made duck calls. Well, his son, who was a little older than me, old enough that I didn't really know him in school, I would have been, we were enough of an age gap that I would have just been a kid to him when he was in high school. Apparently extremely intelligent, who went on to work for NASA.
Oh, wow.
And he makes a few calls as well. And they were having a contest at that show that I went to at the Von Braun Center. And it was kind of odd. They had an open division. David Hahn was his name. So he worked at NASA, and he was heading up the show. I think they had a qualifier there at one time, but then they had an open contest, and I had already qualified, and so I entered the open, and I was fortunate enough to win the open, and was talking to the guys after the contest, and the guy that was the tabulator of the scores was a rocket scientist. Like, David introduced me to him and said, I worked with him. He said he's a rocket scientist. Most of the time someone says he's a rocket scientist, with us it's like a joke,
Right, yeah.
But I knew he was serious.
Right.
The guy had long hair pulled back into a ponytail, and dude just looked smart. He just looked like he invented something, when you saw him. You could tell and so he's tabulating duck calling scores just because he's buddies with David. And I thought it was so funny that we had an actual rocket scientist tabulating scores at a duck calling contest.
I'm going to say nothing got screwed up.
I think you got it right.
Yeah.
I felt comfortable that I had actually won and no one made a miscalculation anyway. Maybe I didn't deserve to win, but he added the scores up right. But it was funny when I met him. I said, man, I always hoped that one day I'd get to meet an actual rocket scientist, but I didn't think it was going to be at a duck calling competition if I ever did. But so it was kind of a cool thing there. But it's a neat little show. It's a good venue. So yeah, anybody that's in the Huntsville area, please come out and see us. Stop by the booth. If you're in the calling council, be sure and let us know that. And we're going to be do some seminars and things like that while we're there. But I'm looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it as well. We're going with our booths now with some of the new products we've got. New shirts that we've come out with a spoon shirt. We're going to have the hats. Elite hats. Some of the new double reads that we're going to have this year. We're going to have some of them with us as well. And cut downs, whatever you're looking for. So
if you're a duck hunter and you don't have a spoon T-shirt, one that we're making, you need to look it up, and trust me, you need one.
You need one.
Go to the website, look up our T-shirts. You can just put in search spoon or T-shirts. It'll pop up. You'll know it when you see it. If you duck hunt, you need a spoon shirt, and anybody that that hunts. There's at least one guy in the club has to have one.
Has to have one for that guy that shoots the spoon when you have a big group working. And the spoon comes in and lands, and everybody wants to know who in the crap shot the spoon bill. But it's it's a good looking shirt, and it's real comfortable.
Yeah, we've got a sign in here about rules of duck camp. One of them is shooting a spoonie is like going to a steakhouse and ordering a hot dog. Choose wisely,
Right.
But hey, let me tell you something. I'll shoot a spoonie.
Oh, I will too.
And there's a lot of guys come in here. They take a lot of offense when they see that sign. They're like,
I've had some of them at a couple of these shows took offense to me saying, who's the guy in your group that shoots the spoon bill that here you need a spoon shirt?
What's that guy? Yeah. But I'll wear the shirt proudly because I'll shoot a spoonie. I'll cap one if he comes.
We got koozies with spoons on them
too. Yeah, got the koozies.
The cuzzies.
Yeah, kuzzies. It's those are cool. So be sure and check those out. Remember, calling council, you get 20% off anything that you order from Elite. as long as we don't have another sale going at the same time, 20% off, which is, that's a big sale for us. So once you join Calling Council, you have everything on sale at Elite for you for the entire year. So take advantage of it and be sure and check us out. And if you have any trouble ordering anything, 501-207-2994, give me a call and we will get you hooked up. And as far as Calling Council, for those of you who are watching this on YouTube and you're not familiar with Calling Council, basically we have an instructional series where we try to do different things there. We want to educate you on calling. There's several videos on there, and the cool thing is they're archived, so you can go back and find things that we talked about months ago. You can look up any of those and get some tutorials on whatever we were talking about that day. You can go back and you can binge watch these and pick out things that might help you along the way. So be sure we're on Substack. So Substack.com. It's called the Calling Council, COUNSEL, just like getting some counseling. Sign up for that, $7 a month or $77 for a year. And like I said, it'll pay for itself. You use Elite Calls, you're going to get 20% off everything that's on our website. So be sure and check it out. I think you'll enjoy it. We do, you get some stuff on sale. We're always going to keep you updated on some new products, talk about some things that are going around the shop, different calls that we've got coming out, things like that. We'll keep you updated. We'll keep you entertained as well. So be sure and check that out. Now, going back to Calling Council and duck calling itself, I was trying to think about what would we talk about today. I mean, there's a couple things on the news, nothing too big, but and I've not seen anything in the news as far as just specifically waterfowl hunting. But I was thinking today about guys that are learning how to call, and if they're council members, guys that are trying to learn how to blow a duck call correctly. I'll tell you what's a big hang up that I had learning it, and one of the things, probably the biggest step that I think I ever made in improving my duck calling when I decided I wanted to really work at it, years ago and become a good duck caller. To me, the thing that held me back and the biggest stride that I made toward just being a guy that could blow a duck call pretty good to taking that step into really learning how to operate one properly was learning to manage my airway, doing what we have nicknamed, blowing with an open throat is kind of what we've nicknamed it. Yep. That's probably my biggest step, my biggest frustration beforehand. And once I mastered that, things started getting a lot better, a lot quick. Was that one of the things, did you ever have to work on that, or did you say something you came naturally for you?
It didn't come naturally. It took a lot of practice to be able to, like you talked about, controlling your air and getting your throat opened up to get that hot air to come through the call. Naturally, when you try to overblow, your throat closes down. So learning how to keep it open, the 95% rule. I mean, when you overblow a call, my throat would always close down. When you blow 100% into a call, it shuts down. And I've actually had a volume meter put in front of me to prove that fact. Overblowing the call, it makes your throat pinch down, and then when you back off,
you lose volume when it constricts.
That's correct, and it gets higher pitched, something like that. But when you back off and you let your vocals and stuff, relax a little bit more, it's tough to get through that. I have, there are some people that can pick it up pretty quick, but I'm going to say 85-90%. It's a learning curve. I know it was, like you talk about you, and it was for me to be able to get your throat opened up with the hot air.
Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story, and I don't want to go on throw a long curveball at you here, but I'll tell you a funny story about that with me. When I was I think it was in the 6th grade. My gosh, we're going back to the 1800s here. But when I was in the 6th grade, they were signing people up. This is embarrassing. I'll probably turn red. I'm kind of ashamed about this. I'll take my head down. But I was in the 6th grade. They were signing kids up to play in the band at the the marching band or whatever in school. And I wanted to play the saxophone because I thought, man, that's a cool instrument. So I waited. They signed everybody up, and I was like, I don't think I'm going to do it. And then at the last minute, all my friends had signed up and stuff, and I thought, okay, I'm going to do it. So I went there late to try to sign up. Is it too late? They're going to let me sign up. What do you want to play? I said, I want to play saxophone. That's a cool instrument. They're like, man, we've got a ton of saxophone players. We really don't need any more. They, we need to get you to play another instrument. I'm like, but I wanted to play the saxophone. And like an idiot, just a kid, I let them talk me into playing the trumpet.
Wow.
Yeah. When you're 6th, 7th grade, if you're lucky enough to have a girlfriend, it's not because you play the trumpet. It's in spite of the fact that you're playing the trumpet. No offense to any trumpet players. There's probably some guy out there that's like a world-class trumpet player that's like signing off a calling council right now, like, I'm done. I'm out. I'm out. But where I'm going with this tangent is I got to a point where, when I got further into it, like, 7th grade, and we're playing harder stuff and hitting higher notes, I couldn't hit certain notes. They were some of the higher ones. When it would come up there to hit a higher note, I couldn't hit it clean. It would make this horrible sound, and I just couldn't do it. And I was like one of the better guys up until that point, until we started hitting the higher notes. And all of a sudden, I was one of the better guys, and then I'm horrible at this. And I remember asking the band director, I'm like, I can't do this. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I cannot hit these notes. And he listened to me trying, and he said, Brad, you're constricting your airway here. You're tightening up here. You got to learn to relax here. And I tried doing it a couple times, but I just couldn't. Well, luckily, right about that time, I started getting, sports was starting. So I'm starting to play basketball. And I'm so frustrated with band. And the coach was like, Brad, he's looking at my schedule. He's trying to look at the practice schedule. He's like, you playing the band? And I'm like, yes, sir. And he's like, well, you don't anymore. And I'm like, thank God. Because I can't, I'm hating
he
what
said,
I'm doing.
out.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah. Oh, well, it sure makes me sad. But thank the Lord I'm out of band now. So I got done with that. Well, fast forward to me being about 23, 24 years old, just got out of grad school, and I decided I want to learn how to do competition calling. And I'm over at Rick Dunn's shop. Now, I had heard guys blowing a duck call prior to that they're hitting notes on this call. They're better than me. I was used to being the better guy in the blind, but a couple times I heard guys, and they were just, he could hit a solid note on that duck call. It was deep tone, and it was solid. It was pure, and I couldn't do it. Mine was just like gravelly, and higher pitched, and I just couldn't hit it. And then when I decided I wanted to learn to get into comp calling, I remember I went to a contest to watch it. It was like a meat calling contest. It had some of the best guys in it. Rob Watts was there, Jim Ronquist was there, Blake Haynes were there, Trey Crawford was there. And I'm listening to them blowing hunting calls. And I'm like, they're hitting that note. I can't, how are they doing that? I'm like, must be my duck call. But then
that's the first thing you blame.
Yeah, the first thing you blame is not yourself.
It's not you. It's the duck
I got
call.
A crappy duck call. But when I would go around blowing some of the calls, like the other makers were there that were the same calls they were using, I couldn't do it either. So when I started getting into comp calling and working with Rick Dunn, the first thing he said, he's like, you got to learn how to open your throat. And I'm like, what do you mean open my throat? And what he's talking about there is opening your upper airway. Now, I grunted the air up. I brought the air up from the gut, from the diaphragm, tight stomach. I did that properly, but I could not. I pinched off right here in the upper airway.
Right.
So I couldn't hit a pure hail call on a comp call. I couldn't hit even a good lower end, a solid tone. I couldn't do it. And so he tells me I'm pinching off my throat. I'm like, well, crap. Kid, I can't play a trumpet.
Going back to 7th grade.
Yeah, I go back to 7th grade. I'm like, crap, I can't blow a trumpet. I can't blow a duck call. Yeah. I've got a throat problem apparently of some kind. So, but he worked me through it, and he got me to do it fast. And I'm like, man, I could have been a hell of a trumpet player. I might have been a Louis Armstrong, when I got done, if I'd had Rick Dunn there, did the band practice earlier. But that was when it clicked for me, and that's when I went from just being total frustration to making my first strides on a duck call when I got to where I could do that.
That's exactly pretty close to the same story when I got over there, is pinching my throat down, and I'm like you go to a calling practice over at Rick's, and there's 15 people there on a Wednesday night, and they can flat out blow a duck call, and as competitive as you and I are, we were before we even started the competition trail. It gets frustrating to think, you know what, I'm doing this, and the time it takes you to practice, and you go home and you create bad habits, then you come back to someone like Rick that's worked with you, and he goes, no, that's not it. And then you go, well, crap, here I go again. I got to start all over. You feel like you got to start all over. But one of the nights we were practicing, and you learn that when you hit it and you hear that sound, it's almost like you don't forget it. You learn how to do that. One particular night, I stopped blowing a routine because I thought the phone in the shop was ringing. And I turned around because we would typically stop, and because it's a phone call coming into the shop, and I turned around, stopped, and he looked at me and he goes, "What'd you stop for?" He said, "You hear some ringing?" And I started laughing. I said, "Yeah, I thought your phone was ringing." He said, "That means you're doing it right," because you hear that buzz, and it just in your ears you're hearing that, bam, bam, bam. It's just you figured it out, and you try for the muscle memories just to remember that in your ear, and then you're getting your throat opened up, and you go, man. And it took you a while to do that. It's pretty tough to do.
I think that for someone who's just starting out or trying to improve, any caller out there, no matter how long you've been doing it, because when I learned how to do it, I'd been calling my whole life up until then. I'm 23, 24 years old working on this, and had been calling and killing ducks for a long time. I knew I had learned kind of a lot more of how to read the ducks. I knew kind of when to call, when to shut up. I was getting better at that, killing a lot more birds. A lot of times I was the guy blowing the duck call. Even with grown men there, they let me handle the calling because I had learned how to kill them.
Right.
But I was not operating that call as well as it should have been operated. So, I'm later in life when this is finally hitting me. But I would say with most callers, if they're struggling with something, I think that at least 75% of the time it has to do with that they're not opening their airway correctly.
It does. It does. It may be a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
Not being able to get your throat opened up, and during the hunting, blowing a duck call while you're hunting is different than blowing on stage. We all know that. It's completely different, but it's the same.
Yeah.
So it kind of contradicts itself.
Yeah, what I'm talking about is not necessarily what I went through with the Main Street type routines, but just the meat calling.
Right.
I couldn't make the sounds I wanted because I couldn't get my throat open.
Right. And you take what I call cheater notes, where you use your throat. Everybody likes to, blow what they call a Cajun squeal or a fine hen or something like that. And they pinch their throat down to do that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Which is a bad habit.
Right.
It's a real bad habit to pinch your throat down to try to make that little ee,
Yeah. Rather than lifting the tongue or pushing the air to get that squeal.
Right.
Present it with an open throat and then pushing the air through, or not shutting it off, just kind of blowing that loose air through, tightening up here to make it go higher pitched.
To make it higher pitched like that. And we had a conversation this morning, I still work with guys, in competition calling at my house, starting, actually the other night, Tuesday night, and working with a young kid, he's just learning really how to blow competition, and his ducks are unbelievable. He can blow the snot out of the ducks. But when it comes to blowing, like a hail call or something, that's what he was doing. Mm-hmm. And then when I finally got him going to scale, trying to come up to it, and he started coughing later in the night, and I said, when you're doing it right, you're going to feel like you're sick because your throat's going to be sore because you're actually doing it right. You're getting your throat opened up. So it's just a time deal. It's just going to take time to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What do you tell people on, like, And I think what we ought to do, we've got a video that we made that I was having a little trouble uploading. So the thing that we need to put up today, we'll get Jake over. You know, Jake's the technical guy.
He's a tech guy.
I'm the old man. I still need like my cell phone should be like a flip phone that you open up and then it should have a rotary dial on it. That's about that's about how technologically sound I am. So Jake will walk me through it, just like, you know, a young guy walking his grandpa on how to use, the remote control or something. But we've got a video that we made on the little hurricane the other day, which is a really great video talking about that call and how we use that. We'll upload that today. But I think the next video we'll make, either I can do it, you can do it, or we'll get together and do one instructional together where we talk about opening up the throat, how to present that air and stuff like that. But like real quick, just overall, what's the first thing you tell someone on how to achieve that, how to get that upper airway? And we say open the throat. We're not talking about the esophagus, obviously. Right. That's your food going through here, but we're talking about the trachea right here, the upper airway. How do you open that up? What's like the first thing you tell someone?
You know, just like the other night, talking to this young man, you know, getting a good grunt on the first part of the note. Mm-hmm. You know, if it's just like you're picking up 100-pound box, you know, something, you know, if you work out, if you do a deadlift or something like that, you know, that's the kind of grunt that I kind of stress on the front end. You know, not everybody can pick that up. So I kind of take another avenue. But just for our whole lives, you've heard of fogging up a window. You know, the fogging up the window. And even some of the generation around me and a little bit younger than me, you know, learning how to do that. When I tell them, you may think you're opening your throat, because I've had them turn around and say, dude, I'm as wide open as I get. I'll just look at them and go, no, you're not. I said, but I'm telling you, when you do it, you're going to go, holy smokes, that's it. So getting that good grunt to get your throat opened up, and then letting the hot air come out of your diaphragm. And you've got to keep pushing that hot air, because what happens, and it's just it happens to everybody. You start out that first part of your note on that grunt's really good, and then all of a sudden it goes, "Aye," and your throat constricts back down. You know, and so just keeping that hot air pushing. That's kind of how I start with it.
Yeah, and when you're hunting and you tighten your throat, you may have a little squeak here and there. You're going to hit some notes that are not right. If you're actually up there running a comp call and you're trying to push that sucker as hard as you can for 90 seconds, and that throat shuts off when you're on the top end blowing a hail or a comeback or something.
Been there,
like
done that.
Yeah, you don't hide that. Like the whole neighborhood knows.
Everybody knows that.
That's a bad note. That's a loud bad note that just makes you want to go crawl under the bed and hide.
I've done that in Moline. Locked her up.
Oh, it's a bad feeling when you hit
it
that.
It is.
And what I always say too, like if you're doing a warm up and you hit it, now I'm scared to death I'm going to do it all the way through the routine. I may not.
You may not.
But it's in your head now. It's like,
it's
oh
definitely
my
in your
gosh,
head.
Don't do that again.
You know, when I first started, that happened to me multiple times. I remember blowing at Brinkley. And Rob, we were sitting out warming up, and I'd get to that one part, and it'd go, beep, and I'd go, okay, back off. Just I'd do it again and get that part, and beep, and Rob looks at me, and he goes, it's in your head.
Yeah.
He said, get it out of your head, man.
Yeah.
Sure enough, it got in my head again when I was blowing a routine on stage.
Yeah, it can definitely mess with you. But we'll go through some things. So you guys, like I said, subscribe to Calling Council. Go to Substack.com. You'll find us on there. $7 a month, $77 for a year. We have a lot of different things on there that I think you're going to enjoy. We try to entertain you and educate you all at the same time. But we'll talk about that. We'll do a video. We got one we'll upload today on Little Hurricane. Then we'll do one on opening there. And truth is, I think we've already got some videos on there. I think I put some on there where I've talked about it already. I think you've talked about, maybe you've talked about
even starting with the quack, learning to get your throat opened up with the quack.
Yeah.
Should be on there.
We'll go through that. Maybe we'll do one together and kind of go through that and show you guys what that means. But if you're struggling with your duck calling right now, there is a good chance that opening up that airway, that air presentation is probably the problem that you're having right now. So we'll go through some of that. And let me tell you something. Once you learn to do that, I tell everybody, that's the big thing. Once you master air presentation, from then on out, it's just practice. It's just putting in the reps of learning everything, getting the rhythms of your calls. It's just practice from there. But once you master keeping that airway open and presenting that air the right way, that's the secret. If there's a secret to duck calling, to me, that's it. That's number one.
That's exactly right. That's number one. Learning how to get your throat opened up and get that good air, good hot air.
Yeah.
There's a difference between good air and good hot air.
I've always been told I was full of hot air.
Well, me too.
But we need to learn. To channel that. If you're full of hot air, you're going to be a great duck caller or a lawyer. But you got to learn to channel it the right way. You got to get educated on the proper way to use it. So, anyway, man, we better get out here. We got calls to make. Got calls to engrave. We got a lot of stuff to get done in the shop. But we'll put that video up. You guys check it out. Hope everybody has a great 4th of July. Be safe. Be safe with your fireworks. Keep all your fingers. Be safe when you're at the lake, driving home. Don't drink and drive. Just have a great 4th of July, and we'll catch you next time.
See you guys.